Akila Srinivasan. I've spent the last 7 years of my career in security and privacy. And today I'm going to share my learnings about privacy and how you can build it in your engineering and product culture. If you're passionate about keeping your data private and maintaining user trust, this is the talk for you. So let's go ahead and get started. To kick things off, this is our general outline. The presentation will give you an overview of some key principles on why privacy is different and cannot simply be bundled into security or compliance. We will then move on to the basic privacy development principles and how you can incorporate it in your end and your engineering infrastructure. Finally, we'll chat a little more about how you can get the budgets to make all of this happen. That is, how do you measure success and plan for it? So, kicking things off. Is privacy more than compliance? Yes, that was definitely a rhetorical question. As an engineering or business leader, it's likely you're going to be asked more and more to help your colleagues comply with an ever-growing set of privacy regulations that only continue to expand. As the inevitable variables from fragmented legislation grows, so does the list of engineering requests and your need to comply with all of them in order to get your business to function in all those regions. You need to adopt to these new data laws, so you need to start understanding all these data policies immediately. If you're going to be taking all of this effort, why don't you just start from the ground up and change your engineering practices for the better? You can build a stronger relationship with your customers that's based on trust and transparency. Current and emerging privacy protections are a catalyst for change, and companies that get ahead of them can benefit significantly. Privacy is a sought-after commodity, and customers who feel that their data may be at risk have shown a distinct tendency to avoid working with companies that properly don't market themselves as being privacy friendly. So what that means is you need to think beyond breaches and do what is needed to maintain your customer trust, since the data you collect is not technically yours, but theirs. So let's talk about privacy versus security. Actually, no, it's privacy and security because they both go hand in hand, and you can't pick one or the other. So let's start with a basic question. As a user, what does privacy mean in our daily lives? Why does it even matter? Why are we even having these conversations? When you watch a video, you generate data. When you make a search, you generate more data. When you share a photo, you generate data. To be honest, I can't think of a single activity that you could do that doesn't generate data. This has been exacerbated by the current pandemic, where we are at home constantly generating data through our digital footprint. Technically, even running can generate data. So you have any health watch app, you're generating data the moment you step outside your home. Every time you open or close an app, it's logged, therefore producing more data. As a user, you want companies to create great personalized solutions to make your day more efficient. But all of this eventually gets served as relevant advertisements to understand your behavior to either serve you different products or cater the products to you in a different way. So this is what privacy means as a user. So let's talk about privacy and security in engineering workflows. Security is having valuable privileges which you want to keep secure. The security team usually focuses on protecting the company, primarily by preventing threats and gaining access to your systems. At a basic level, that means hardening your systems, evangelizing best practices, reviewing code for insecurity, so the red teaming exercises and threat modeling and all of that, and then scanning for abuse and signals that can be blocked, so malicious actors. What does privacy mean? A privacy program focuses on sensitive information that an organization collects and maintains about its users. It is inevitable to develop a good product that can be used by a wide set of customers if you do not have data on them. A privacy team is usually made up of privacy experts with backgrounds in data science, data engineering, infrastructure engineering, law, and policy. Security is about keeping the threats out. Privacy, on the other hand, is about how we handle what's on the inside. What do we do with people's data? How do we prevent unprecedented access either internally or externally? Finally, security is not negotiable, but doesn't mean it's sufficient for privacy. It's just the baseline. And privacy is all about being data conscious. So let's talk about some basic privacy principles. I would highly recommend checking out Privacy by Design, 7 Foundational Principles. I'm going to give you an overview of what those principles are, but again, definitely take some time and read about these in detail. Let's start off with proactive, not reactive. It's more or less very self-indicative. It should be a core part of your infrastructure where privacy should be baked into your system development lifecycle or your software development lifecycle based on the type of product that you ship. Second, privacy as the default setting. All personal data should be automatically protected. In other words, the user doesn't have to do anything special to ensure that their privacy needs are met. And the same applies to your infrastructure. You need to bake privacy into the development flow to ensure people actually use it. Embed privacy into the design. Infrastructure and product, it matters to both. What this means is privacy should be central to everything that you actually do, and it should never come at the expense of functionality. So if anyone ever tells you that, hey, I don't think we can do anything special with this data because it's going to affect usability or customers won't be able to do XYZ, you probably aren't thinking about your product in the right way. And this is very important. As mentioned earlier, the regulatory landscape today is constantly in flux. New countries are constantly coming up with new privacy laws. If privacy itself is an afterthought, your products are likely to not stay compliant. So privacy needs actively need to be considered for you to even operate your business in certain areas. The fourth one, full functionality, positive sum, not sum zero. What this means is there shouldn't be trade-off to ensure your customers and your company's privacy needs are met. Privacy shouldn't come at the expense of something else. Again, if anyone ever comes back to you and is like, we won't be able to generate money because we aren't able to serve the right sort of information to the user, that's wrong. That's a false dichotomy. It means you're doing something that you probably shouldn't do. Fifth, end-to-end security and full lifecycle protection. This is going to be a core part of your infrastructure. This has a large area of intersection between security and privacy. The security principle has special relevance here because at its essence, without strong security, there can be no privacy. Privacy should be continuously protected across the entire domain throughout the data lifecycle in question. There should be no gaps either in protection or accountability. So thinking of the fundamental CIA principles of security, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, that applies to privacy too. If you do not have access control, data encryption, VPN, endpoint security, then the privacy of your customers or your employees at your company will be compromised. Sixth, visibility and transparency. It's about keeping it open. It applies again both to infrastructure and product. Transparency with your customers. Are you publishing information in simple language that ensures that you are accountable to your customers? Seventh, privacy for users and keeping it user-centric. It applies again to both infrastructure and product. The best privacy by design results are usually those that are conscious about privacy choices and interest of the individual users. User consent, user-centric features, making it easy for a user to change their privacy settings are basic ways we can do this. So let's actually talk about meat and potatoes. What does it mean to build privacy? So starting off with building privacy in your product. So this is when you're serving something to your end customer, what does it look like and how do they think about it? Privacy is a complex concept with many interpretations. Everyone is sensitive sometimes. Individuals can often opt into photo sharing to allow the app to provide them an underlying service. But let's say, unbeknownst to them, the app does something nefarious and collects the data for a completely different purpose. You agreed to this one particular app to take your photos, but all of a sudden it's also taking, it has a microphone on arbitrarily and taking voice recordings. That exceeds the user's understanding of what the app should be doing, and it rightfully makes them nervous about using this app. Privacy is often not a user's primary task, even though privacy is important to them. So if you want to go change your privacy setting, it's a part of an application, it's not the whole app. Users may look for security privacy settings after experiencing a potential life event or a privacy or security event. So if you see news stories about breaches or you actually have your account compromised or you have a security alert, you will likely go to your privacy settings and change your information there. At-risk users may face this circumstance more often. Survivors of partner abuse, activists, and journalists. Users typically want privacy when they need it. So it's your job to make it as easy as possible for them to use those services. Do not end up giving privacy to them as this awkward interruption. The third part, it's about user behavior. No choice is forever. Everyone's privacy preferences change. And that's because people change their minds. Create data sharing controls that are easy to find and adjust. The fourth one is about having simple language. People find transparency, education, and control helpful. Tech is already very complex. Don't confuse your customers further by making it more difficult for them to make themselves feel safe. Keep your privacy UI simple and keep your language easy to understand. Fifth, do not ever violate user trust. It is very hard to recover from something that impacts your brand significantly. It will also impact your customer reputation if news ever breaks out that you are doing underhanded mechanisms to collect user data that, again, fundamentally violates their trust. Six, with new privacy laws in Brazil, California, and Europe, cookie tracking is now a permission model where you can opt in to some level of tracking that you're comfortable with. This is the first real set of technical implementations that have happened worldwide. Do not create a model where a customer has to choose mechanisms to ensure that their data is kept safe. So what I'm trying to say is make privacy opt in, not opt out. Think of it in a different way. It could actually translate to market growth. Enhanced privacy regulations on data collection, in fact, can also lead to better ROI. It's because when people are opting in for data collection, it actually leads to reducing irrelevant leads. So now think of it as a funnel. The amount of information in your funnel has reduced. However, your signal to noise has dramatically increased because you know the people who are choosing to opt in are probably people who are interested in your product, which is boosting your business. The seventh one, don't purposefully force the user to expose unnecessary data. Privacy should be the default setting. So thinking now about going from the product to the infrastructure side, what does it mean to be privacy proactive or data proactive when you build your infrastructure? Threat modeling is a critical part of it. You've probably heard of threat modeling very often in security, but the same concept carries for privacy. Data flow is critical. What data is entering your company? How does your system work? Who has access to what information internally? What are the endpoints that you're exposing externally? What are the ways the data is leaving your company? Who has control of this data outside your company? The second part, each microservice or system built should be systematically analyzed. Same concept of privacy is contextual applies here. One product is fundamentally different from the other product, so the privacy needs are also going to be different. So based on the product that you are building, whether it's a monolithic product or a microservice-based function, you have to take into account that specific service's privacy needs and then design for it. This way, you also ensure you do not compromise usability. You also need to understand what is the minimum data required for your business to function and draw a clear line on if it is necessary to collect additional data. More data isn't good. It increases your storage, it increases your compute, it is more expensive, but it also increases your company's risk. The third bucket, privacy by design. And I've been saying this over and over again, but you need to understand your data flows and data quality. Privacy is very closely tied to data. But let's think of this from a different lens. I encourage you again to read some of these concepts that I'm mentioning in depth. Let's start with data minimization. It's more or less how do you collect the amount of data how do you reduce the amount of data you're collecting, or how do you delete the amount of data that you've collected and it's met its core purpose. So personal identifiable information specifically should be kept at a strict minimum. Whenever possible, identifiable, observability, linkable information specifically related to personal information should be deleted after it's met its use. Second thing, purpose limitation or purpose specification. Why is this personal information collected? Why is it used and why does it need to be retained? This information should be clearly communicated to your customer. So at the end of the day, if something bad does happen and you have a breach, your app, let's say, is again going to the previous example, is using photos. Why are they voice memos or something regarding a user's voice in that breach information? The user never agreed to any of this stuff. Next, I'm going to be talking about collection limitation. And this is something that's been enforced by a lot of the GDPR, CCPA laws. The collection of personal information must be fair, lawful, and limited to which is necessary for the specified purpose. And lastly, another thing mandated by CCP and GDPR is use retention and disclosure limitation. So the use, the retention, and disclosure of personal data should be limited to what your customer has consented to. And it should be retained for only as long as necessary. Apart from that, it should be securely destroyed or deleted. The customer should always have accessibility to their information. You need to, again, solidify your data models for you to be able to do any of these successfully. Moving on to the next slide. Again, it's very important to build privacy into the core design, operations, and management of systems and processes. Let's start with three main buckets, and that's how I think about it when I design privacy programs, when I'm thinking about how do I use my engineering resources for privacy. Proactive privacy, automation, and build versus buy. Privacy, firstly, let's start with proactive privacy. It's about, again, understanding your data landscape. You cannot meet your minimum privacy requirements unless you bake those controls into the core infrastructure of your system. It is very cost prohibitive to retrofit privacy into your infrastructure because, again, your data science teams, your data engineering teams, every team that relies on making a data-driven decision will be affected all of a sudden if you manipulate that and if you try to retrofit some arbitrary privacy control, because that just doesn't scale and work. The next part is automation. Data duplicates significantly the moment it enters a company, and it is impossible to manually track it down. You need to create scalable automation in a secure and system agnostic way. And always privacy should be built very close to your infrastructure data pipelines and to your CI/CD pipelines. If you're using a specific mechanism to check in code, but you're not validating how that code has been checked in, or you're not trying to catch bugs during the test cases, that's going to lead to security issues. Privacy functions in a very similar way. The next is build versus buy. There are many tools that can be built or purchased depending on the use case. And those tools and the companies that are creating these tools have probably spent a lot more time than you have thinking about this problem. So there are definitely benefits of buying tools because it's cheaper in the short term. It probably will work better for a lot of your needs, even though it doesn't come with very specific customizations because they've been doing it for many people. They can probably do it well for you. However, buying tools can lead to more intrusive access into your systems. And now you're dependent on this third-party tool having strong security controls for your customer data. Is this a risk that you're comfortable taking? And how do you ensure that you are aware of the security and privacy models of this third-party company that's now going to be taking care of your privacy needs? So those are the fundamental ways that you can think about building privacy into your infrastructure. So talking about what does it mean as an employee, as an engineer, and how should a privacy professional think about doing all of this stuff in a company? Privacy is never going to be an employee's main task. It's very similar to, again, a user. Privacy isn't the primary reason they're using a product. They're using a product and they want privacy gains on top of it because that is their expectation. Engineers want to write code. Data scientists want to create and learn from data sets, and PMs or product managers want to ship products. It is your job as a privacy engineer, as someone who's working in privacy as a program manager, product manager, policy, or law, to make it as easy as possible for people to incorporate privacy in their day job. You can do this, again, by building it directly into your infrastructure or data pipelines. You can build it directly into your data flows. You can create tools to catch privacy issues, to retroactively let people know about, hey, this was something that you probably shouldn't have done. This is how you can go fix it. So you can make every employee privacy aware. So privacy trainings, or you can ensure that they just don't do the wrong thing. You can have audit checks. You can have tools that catch for mistakes in like your data warehouses or in your actual code. Or I would say just do both. It is important to train people on why this stuff matters, because if you don't train people and if people aren't aware, mistakes will happen. Just to ensure there isn't any confusion about this particular graphic, I love pineapples on my pizza, and people often ask me to choose between them. So I was like, why not just put pineapples on pizzas? Because it makes it better. So both. So moving on to how to measure privacy success. We want to do all of these great things in privacy, and you have bought into like my perspective on, yes, it's important, let's go do this. We won't be able to function our business. We want to gain user trust. At the end of the day, you need money to go about doing this. So how do you ensure that you can create a thoughtful ask on why this is important? Start off with risk reduction. More data is generally bad because you're exposing yourselves to greater risk. Collect what the user has approved for and what is needed to improve your business. Do not just collect more data because it's simply available. Benchmarking is also important. Benchmarking internal privacy progress to mitigate privacy risk. For example, collect some data to show which group in your company has had significant privacy incidents. Work with them to make them more privacy aware, and then see over time, how does your risk portfolio drop? Next, measuring privacy effectiveness through a proactive privacy culture. Your central privacy team or privacy team as a part of different groups cannot always stay on top of every new release and incremental updates that happens in a company, because that's going to stop your company from being agile. So a privacy team being on top of all of this every time effectively is impractical. You need to train your teams on basic privacy principles to ensure that something bad doesn't happen. And if something bad does happen, they can say something. So you see something, you say something. But if you don't have the knowledge in order to even understand what went wrong, you're just going to have repeated mistakes over and over again. The next is user trust. User trust is the second biggest deciding factor on what product a company chooses, or what product a customer chooses. Market share is a huge business target, and privacy can directly contribute to it. So if you have two competing businesses doing something very similar, what can you do to build trust within your customers? Next, build your brand using privacy as a pillar to show a competitive edge. Yes, we offer you all these great services, but we also do the right thing by you, which is why it's so important for you to pick us. That's a strong message you can tell your customers. Finally, avoid expensive mistakes. And you can save a lot of money this way. A data breach, a government fine, all of this costs a lot of money, apart from just eroding customer trust. You can easily stay on top of this by just adopting some of these privacy principles in your development flows. And this was mostly it for my presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you.